Okay, next we have first-time homebuyers savings account, Sean Jillians and Sean Cleve.
Good morning, Chair Geyer, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Sean Cleve, representing the Oregon Association of Realtors. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of the concept for a first-time homebuyer savings account. We did testify in this committee, and this committee actually did move the bill out last full session. Unfortunately, towards the end of the session, the bills that we had introduced in both the Senate and the House stalled out. Briefly, the concept behind the first-time homebuyer savings account is very similar to the Oregon IDA program, Individual Development Account Program. That program is a very successful program that provides funding for people below 80% area median income, with matching deposits. Both the deposits from the individual and the matching deposits do not count as income for the individual. It's an accelerator for saving for a house. This program would be similar, however, though it does not come with the same income gap or income restriction, and it really focuses in on that missing middle of the housing market that we're looking at. One of the largest concerns that we have as realtors in Oregon is the decline of first-time home buyers. Within the packet, there is an economic research. On page 15 of the packet, it demonstrates that in 2009, roughly 44% of purchasers were first-time home buyers. In 2016, only 28.8% of the population were first-time home buyers. So that's a huge gap and a change in demographic. Our concern without those first-time homebuyers in the market, and there's a variety of reasons for that that's laid out in the economic research, but without those people purchasing, it really cripples a healthy, robust market in housing, and there's no silver bullet when it comes to housing policy. However, this is a policy that we truly believe in. Also within the documentation that is provided to the committee is some information of other states that have adopted similar programs. Montana's actually had a program like this since 1997. Colorado, Iowa, Minnesota, Mississippi, and Virginia have also adopted similar programs. Within the packet is the fiscal impact statements regarding the programs in those states. Again, this is a self-determined program. You would elect to start saving. You would use a product that would be provided by a credit union or a bank and make deposits for individuals up to $5,000. For joint filers, you could make up a deposit up to $10,000. And that would cap out over a 10-year period to a total of $50,000 that would be allowed to save Oregon income tax free. Obviously, there are some limitations on housing. I think this committee talked quite a bit about supply issues. There's some details in here about supply and who would be purchasing and what type of product they would be purchasing. But I'll turn it over now to Sean Jillians to talk a little bit about some of the financial constraints that we have.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, Sean Jillians, representing the Oregon Association of Realtors. You guys should be getting my packet of 43 pages. Oh, no, that's just Sean had to give you a big packet.
Supporting the timber industry.
Exactly. As we heard the conversation this morning, I think a lot of attention's been paid, rightfully, to true subsidized affordable housing and getting people in the door there, whether it's 60% of AMI or 80% of AMI. You're really looking at the only purchase opportunity that people have in those income ranges is heavily subsidized. You're not going to be able to buy a market rate unit at those income levels. And so this particular program is how how do we get to those folks to incentivize them who are closer to the area median income or well above it. And we started running some numbers, and you guys have heard a lot of them when we have the conversation around the mortgage interest deduction as well. But we really have an affordability problem at all income levels, basically, in Oregon now. It is becoming increasingly harder for the typical Oregonian to afford to buy a house. Our home ownership rate is on the decline and below the national average because of that. So it's what incentives can we look for that will have a positive return on that, and that's where the first-time homebuyer savings account comes into place. So I ran some numbers. Madam Chair, you gave us some stats on the statewide AMI when we met last week. The statewide area median income, $62,000 a year. I can tell you right now, at 100% of the AMI, you're not going to be able to afford to buy a house basically anywhere in Oregon. I pulled numbers from a number of cities. I thought perhaps Grants Pass was going to be a little more affordable. Representative Stark, it's not anymore. You've been doing a good job of selling folks on it. The statewide average sale price right now is $280,000 a year. So at $280,000 a year, if you had no other debts, you would have to make $78,000 a year to buy that house. $78,000 a year. I talked about our area median income, 100% at $62,000. If you factor in that you had $1,000 of additional debt, so student loan, car payments, credit cards, you'd have to make $93,000 a year. That's for our statewide average, where things are what we would say more affordable. McMinnville, right about that same average, $278,000. So those numbers are pretty comparable. Bend, we're approaching $400,000 for the average house there. It's actually at $395,000. The Portland area, we have Clackamas County. The average house there now is $363,000. You have to make $94,000 a year to be able to afford just the average house there. If you have those debts, $106,000. So when we start talking about who needs help buying a house, there's been a lot of talk about, well, this particular program already helps those who would save otherwise. That's not true. We have reached a point where people aren't able to afford, and especially as we've seen rents increase, we've actually seen analysis now. It will be cheaper to buy a house in Portland with your monthly payments than it is to rent anymore. So we want to incentivize people to be able to do that. It's the largest source of wealth for the middle class is home ownership and building that equity in your home. So we really need to start thinking beyond just the typical target audience that we look for. And quite honestly, Madam Chair, doing the numbers, I pulled up the City of Portland's AMI. You're at 74,000. At 100% in the Portland metro area. At 120%, you're at 89,000. So 120%, you still can't afford a market rate house in Portland. So that's why this particular program is pushing the envelope as far as what we determine for affordability. I would just add, I was trying to find some extreme example of where you can't afford anything. Ashland takes the cake. Representative Marsh would be very happy if she were here. $500,000 now for the average house there. I don't want to make a commentary about our land use system and Ashland's anti-growth policies, but you might see a correlation there. Lastly, Madam Chair, document recording fee. I'm getting the sense that perhaps you're supportive of an increase. It was pretty subtle this morning. I think we agree with you that the document recording fee has funded a number of terrific projects. Our conversation has always been, should it simply be on the backs of homeowners that we're investing as a state in homeownership programs, or should we actually make the state put skin in the game? We've been delighted at your efforts to get bonding in there. Someday, maybe we'll even get a general fund appropriation into some of these programs. So that's sort of where we balance things out. And we additionally think that we need to look at all the options, not just one particular fee as we move forward. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't know if Sean had anything.
One item to close before we open up to questions. I really would encourage you to kind of skim through the executive summary summary and the back pages of the economic report. It really details exactly who we think will benefit. I think over a 5-year period, because of ramp up, passage of legislation, rulemaking, incentivizing and working with banks and credit unions to provide the product of their choice, it will take some time before this eases into the general knowledge of the consumers out there that are looking to save for their first home. However, because of the interplay between purchases that happen when you purchase a house, there's roughly on average about $4,000 in additional spending that occurs. That economic activity actually generates income tax for the state of Oregon, and based on this analysis, for every dollar that's invested at the state level, there's $1.26 that's created in economic activity. So a really interesting interplay there of hypothetically the system paying for itself. Now, Department of Revenue and our fiscal analysts in the legislature will not do dynamic scoring that way, but from a dynamic perspective, it's really interesting to look at.
Questions? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this presentation. Just for the sake of supporting it as it is, so in your opinions, and I know there's probably statistics, knowing that our average citizen out there working hard trying to save money to buy a house, I don't see a really big opportunity for abuse with this, with very wealthy people throwing money into this account. And so my biggest push to support this is that there really is not going to be that large of an opportunity to abuse this program where a bunch of wealthy people are going out and buying houses and getting tax deductions. Being somebody from the industry, I know it's difficult as enough just to save funds. So in your guesstimate, if there was abuse, would it be at the top 1% or half of 1%?
Chair Geyer, Representative Meek, that's a really good question. First, you have to look at the structure of the savings program. So if you're looking and you're concerned about an individual that would otherwise save or perhaps be given a loan or a gift from a parent or relative to purchase, the maximum amount that an individual could receive in a tax benefit in a given year would be that $5,000 maximized deposit. So that would roughly be the Oregon income tax equivalent of that $5,000. I believe that type of behavior already occurs in the marketplace through gifting and whatnot. So it really is by function of the savings program, the limitations, the period of time that you can save. It's not open to that kind of abuse.
And Madam Chair, Representative Meek, the important thing to remember is that it's only the individual person saving who receives the tax benefit. So, if you're looking at a wealthy parent who's going to gift it, they don't enjoy the tax savings on that. It really is just individuals. In the House Finance and Revenue Committee yesterday, they had an interesting sort of compilation of what happens under the federal tax plan and what pushes and puts that we had from the federal level, and the comment was made by legislative revenue, we just don't have a lot of rich people in Oregon. And that really was part of the factor into it. We just don't have that many. And if you honestly think that someone who's that rich is just now buying their first home, because this is just for first-time home buyers, I think your universe is relatively small, to say the least.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, any other questions? Well, I really appreciate you putting this idea on the table. I know it's one that we are going to entertain in this committee. I am, as you know, feel, as you do, that we need to have more general fund allocation to the whole area of housing. It's as essential as the money that we put into education and healthcare and human services and economic development and transportation, and why we don't put more into it. I'm 100% with you. I know there's often a cost sharing in the health arena. You've got billions of dollars in Medicaid, you've got hospitals doing charity care, and so we're looking for a shared contribution to the doc fee as well as general fund support. And so appreciate your comments on that, and I am in alignment with you on that, and look forward to further discussions.
Thank
about
you.
both the doc fee and the first-time home buyer tax deferred savings account.
We appreciate
Thank
that.
you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you for all this information. Really helpful. Okay.